All right, so today we're diving into platform businesses.
Oh, this will be fun.
Yeah, really focusing on this question of openness. You know how open should a platform be?
It's a big one. It really is.
Like, imagine if anyone could just edit, like, an encyclopedia entry. Kind of like, Wikipedia.
Yeah.
This is kind of cool.
Right.
Like that free flow of knowledge.
It does.
But then what if it leads to, like, inaccuracies or biases?
Right.
Like, stuff like what happened with the murder of Meredith Kercher entry on Wikipedia.
Exactly.
So that's what we're going to kind of tackle today.
Yeah.
This whole balance between letting users participate,
Right.
but then also making sure things don't, go completely off the rails. We're going to be using Platform Revolution to help guide us through this.
Okay.
And looking at some real-world examples like
Yeah.
Wikipedia, which we just mentioned,
Okay.
MySpace, Facebook, even Apple.
All right.
Kind of seeing how they've navigated this whole open versus closed dilemma.
Well, it's not quite that simple, right? It's not just about being open or closed.
Right.
Parker and Van Alstyne, the authors of Platform Revolution,
Yeah.
they define openness as how much a platform lets people participate
Okay.
without, restrictions. But, they warn against being too strict about it.
Okay.
Because too many rules can actually stifle, innovation
Yeah.
and engagement, which are so important.
Right. That makes sense.
You need that for a platform to really work.
So it's not just about, throwing open the doors and hoping for the best.
Right.
It's about finding that right balance.
It is. Like a dinner party,
Oh.
You want to invite those interesting people.
Right.
Encourage good conversation.
Yeah.
But you still need some ground rules, right?
You don't want things to get crazy.
Exactly. And a good example of this is MySpace and Facebook.
Oh, yeah. MySpace. I remember them.
Yeah, they were the
big thing before Facebook came along.
They were huge.
What?
Well, part of their downfall was they were really closed off to developers in the beginning.
Oh.
They wanted to build every feature themselves.
Ooh.
So,
Kind of like their secret recipe.
yeah, something like that.
Keep it all in-house.
Exactly. But it backfired.
Didn't work out so well.
No. Bugs piled up. The platform got clunky.
Yeah.
And, innovation really slowed down.
So no one from the outside could really come in and, help fix things or add anything new.
Right, exactly. And then you have Facebook. They went the opposite way, a much more open approach.
Okay.
They welcomed developers, built this whole ecosystem of apps,
Oh, okay.
really enriched their platform.
So it's like they basically said, hey, everyone, come on in. Let's make something awesome together.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that worked out well for them, at least.
Very well. Look at figure 7.1 in Platform Revolution. You see MySpace dominating 2006, early 2007.
Okay.
Then Facebook opens up and boom, figure 7.2.
Yeah.
Their daily reach just skyrockets.
Wow.
And MySpace is, left behind.
Wow. So getting those developers on board, that was key for Facebook.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it seems like it's not just a matter of open or closed.
No.
There are levels to it,
Right.
different ways to be open.
Exactly.
Platform Revolution talks about 3 main areas where platforms have to make these choices about openness.
Right.
Manager and sponsor participation, developer participation, which we were just talking about,
Okay.
and then user participation.
Right.
So starting with manager and sponsor participation, who are these guys?
So that's basically the folks behind the scenes, right?
Oh.
One's controlling the structure of the platform. Could be a single company, like Apple with their iPhones,
Okay.
or a whole group, like the airlines that started Orbitz.
Oh, right.
Each model has its own pluses and minuses, so platforms have to choose what works for them.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So you've got the folks calling the shots, but then you need the people actually building the stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's where the developers come in.
That's right. Platform Revolution talks about different types of developers.
Yeah.
You got your core developers, the in-house team building the foundation. Then you have your extension developers.
Yeah.
They're the outside innovators adding all those cool features.
Right.
And then you got the data aggregators.
Data aggregators.
Yeah.
Now that sounds a little, I don't know, mysterious.
Yeah.
What did they do exactly?
They gather information about, the users, and how they interact on the platform.
Okay.
Think about those targeted ads that seem to know everything about you.
Oh, yeah. The ones that are a little too accurate.
Yeah, that's often the work of data aggregators. They play a big role in matching users with, products and services they might like.
Okay.
But it can be tricky.
Yeah.
Raises privacy concerns depending on how that data is used.
All right. So kind of creepy, but also potentially useful.
That's it.
It's all about how it's managed and protected, I guess.
Exactly. And that brings us to the third area, the users themselves.
User participation. Okay.
Yeah, and how much control a platform has over what users do. That's a big deal.
Yeah, and I think a good example of this is Wikipedia.
Oh, yeah.
They started with like this radical idea of anyone can edit anything.
Right.
But like we were talking about earlier, that can cause some major problems.
Absolutely.
Like, biases creeping in, inaccuracies, even deliberate manipulation.
It happens.
And that's where curation becomes so important.
It really does.
Platforms need to balance, encouraging participation, but also making sure the information's, good quality.
Right.
So how do you do that? I mean, how do you find that balance?
Okay.
Keep things from turning into like total chaos.
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Different platforms have different approaches. Wikipedia, they rely on community moderation a lot. Users can flag, edits that seem problematic, and they have algorithms, software tools to help spot inconsistencies, vandalism, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Facebook, they depend more on user reporting systems, flagging inappropriate content, and they've put a lot into AI to, automatically remove harmful stuff.
So it's like a constant battle trying to stay ahead of the bad guys.
It can feel like that sometimes.
But user feedback seems really important for keeping these platforms, trustworthy.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just about reacting to the bad stuff.
Right.
It's about encouraging good behavior, building a healthy community.
Right.
Platforms like Uber and Airbnb, they use rating systems to build trust, encourage good interactions.
Yeah.
It's all about creating a space where users can contribute, but, without things going off the rails.
Right.
It takes a lot of thought, constant adaptation to get it right.
So we got these three areas. Who's running the show, who's building the stuff, and who's using it. And the takeaway is there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
No.
It's about finding the right level of openness for each area.
Yeah.
Depending on what the platform's trying to achieve.
Exactly.
And to really see how this all plays out, I think it helps to look at some real-world case studies.
I agree.
We already talked a bit about MySpace and Facebook.
We did.
But there are some other fascinating examples.
Oh, yeah.
That show how different approaches to openness can lead to, very different outcomes. Like, remember the epic battle between Apple and Microsoft back in the 80s and 90s?
Oh, wow. Taking me back.
Yeah, back to the days of floppy disks and dial-up.
Those were the days.
So what was that all about, this big Apple versus Microsoft showdown?
Well, Apple, known for their sleek integrated systems, they decided to keep their Macintosh operating system pretty closed.
Okay.
They charged developers a hefty fee to access their system development kits. Really limited outside contributions.
So they were kind of playing it close to the vest, huh?
You could say that.
Going for quality over quantity when it came to software.
Yeah, very much so.
While Microsoft, it sounds like they were more like the more the merrier.
That's a good way to put it. They practically gave away their SDKs to any developer who wanted them.
Wow.
And since IBM had kind of lost control of the PC hardware standard, anyone could make PCs. So you had these cheaper computers plus tons of software for Windows and,
Microsoft took all.
They exploded in popularity.
Yeah.
And Apple, even with their elegant system,
Right.
just couldn't keep up on price or software availability.
So in that round, Microsoft's openness, that really paid off for them.
Big time.
Gave them a huge edge in the PC market.
It did.
It's interesting, though, how things played out differently with mobile phones.
Oh, how so?
Apple and Google, they were the main players there.
They were, yeah.
But they took different approaches.
They did.
And this next case study, it really shows how those choices mattered.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear about this.
So we see Apple, having learned from their past, maybe finding a new balance with their iOS platform.
Okay, so they loosened up a little bit.
They did.
Yeah.
But they still kept a firm grip on things.
They did.
Like, they wanted to encourage a thriving app ecosystem.
Right.
Without giving up control completely.
Yeah, they found a way.
They gave developers great tools. Access to, millions of users through the App Store.
Right.
Which, let's be honest, has been a huge moneymaker for them.
Absolutely. All those app downloads, in-app purchases, it's massive.
So on the other side, you've got Google.
Yeah.
And they took a much more radical approach with Android.
Oh, yeah.
They went all in on openness.
Okay.
They even made an open source version, AOSP, Android Open Source Project.
Right.
It's like they said, here's the blueprint, go nuts.
Wow, that's some serious trust in the community.
But was it too much trust? Didn't that lead to problems?
Well, it definitely created some challenges.
Okay.
Android, yeah, it was adopted really widely. But then Google, they started struggling with this thing called fragmentation.
Fragmentation.
Yeah, so all these device manufacturers, they were making their own customized versions of Android, often without, Google's core apps like search and maps.
Oh, so Google was kind of left out in the cold.
In a way, yeah. They were missing out on revenue, and data from these devices. It was a classic case of, the innovator's dilemma being disrupted by their own openness.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it was a tough spot for them.
So what did they do? Did they shut down the whole open source project?
No, they couldn't really do that, but they nudged things in a different direction.
Okay.
Started requiring licenses for Google Play access.
Ah.
So manufacturers wanted that, their app store.
Right.
That gave Google some leverage. And they made some of their key apps, like search and maps, exclusive to their own ecosystem. So manufacturers had a reason to join their Open Handset Alliance.
Right.
Keep some standardization.
So even with their commitment to openness, they still found ways to, steer things a bit.
They did. It shows that balance, It's constantly shifting.
Yeah. And ultimately, those moves, they benefited Google, but they also benefited the users.
Right, they did.
So let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
Let's talk about user participation.
All right.
How that fits into this whole openness picture.
Sounds good.
So you mean how much users can create content and shape the platform experience?
Exactly.
Think about Wikipedia again.
Okay.
They're all about letting anyone edit.
Right.
And it's created, the largest encyclopedia in the world.
It's amazing, really.
Really is.
A testament to, collective knowledge, collaboration.
But we've also seen the potential downsides, right?
We have.
Like with that murder of Meredith Kercher.
Yeah.
Entry.
Yeah.
Bias, accuracy issues.
It shows you that unchecked openness can be risky.
Yeah, for sure.
It's about finding that delicate balance. That's where curation comes in.
Right.
Platforms have to manage user-generated content, but without, squashing the collaboration.
Right, the thing that makes these platforms so valuable in the first place.
Exactly.
So it's not about letting everyone run wild.
No.
It's about having some structure,
It is.
encouraging participation, but also ensuring quality control, accountability.
Right. How do platforms like Wikipedia and Facebook manage that?
Well, Wikipedia, they rely heavily on community moderation.
Okay.
Users can flag edits that seem off. They also have algorithms, software tools that can help identify problems, like inconsistencies, vandalism, that kind of thing.
Right. Makes sense.
Facebook, they depend more on users reporting things.
Okay.
Flagging inappropriate content. They've also put a lot of resources into AI to automatically detect and remove harmful.
It's impressive, the technology they're using.
So it sounds like a never-ending battle.
It can be. It can be. Trying to stay one step ahead.
But it seems like user feedback, that's a key ingredient.
Absolutely.
For keeping these platforms, honest.
It is. It is.
And it's not just about, reacting to the bad stuff.
Yeah.
It's about proactively encouraging, good behavior.
Right.
Building a healthy community.
Yeah. Like with Uber and Airbnb, their rating systems, that's all about building trust.
Okay.
Encouraging good interactions.
So it's kind of a multi-pronged approach.
It is.
Using technology, community feedback, smart design to create a space where users can contribute.
Yeah.
But, without letting things get out of control.
Exactly. It's a tough balance to strike.
But sometimes the biggest challenges to openness, they don't come from bad actors.
Oh, is that right?
They come from the platform's own success.
Huh. That's interesting.
What happens when a feature or an app becomes so popular that it starts to overshadow the platform itself?
Ooh, I see what you're getting at.
Yeah, it's like Frankenstein's monster turning on its creator.
That's one way to put it.
A little dramatic, maybe.
Maybe a little.
But it captures the attention, right?
It does.
Think about Google Maps a few years ago.
Okay.
It was the king of mapping apps.
Yeah.
It was even on the iPhone.
Right.
But as location data became, more and more valuable, Apple, they realized that Google Maps, it was becoming a threat.
A threat? How so?
Well, they were worried that it would become too powerful. Maybe even lure users away from, Apple's own platform.
I see.
So they did something bold.
What's that?
They decided to build their own mapping app.
Wow, from scratch.
Yep. even though it meant, starting from zero
Yeah.
and risking some hiccups along the way.
And there were some hiccups, weren't there?
Oh, yeah. Remember those early versions of Apple Maps?
I do.
People getting lost, ending up in the wrong places.
It was a bit of a mess.
It was a PR nightmare.
It really was.
But Apple, they were willing to take that hit.
Wow.
Because they knew how important it was to control that feature.
Yeah, makes sense.
And eventually, they caught up.
They did.
Apple Maps, it's a serious contender now.
It is.
And Apple, they have control again.
So sometimes you got to play hardball, huh?
Sometimes you do, even if it means taking a hit to your reputation.
Hmm.
It's all about, controlling your own destiny.
It's a high-stakes game.
It is.
And sometimes those tough decisions involve reining in features that were originally developed, outside the platform.
Okay.
Think about things like video playback, audio, photo editing, voice commands.
Yeah.
Many of those started as third-party apps.
Right.
And then the platform sort of takes over.
Which doesn't seem very fair to those developers.
No, you can feel that way.
They created this great thing, and then the platform swoops in and says, thanks, we'll take it from here.
Yeah, but there's a strategic reason for it. As those features become, essential platforms, they need consistency.
Okay.
Quality, seamless integration.
So it's not about stifling innovation. It's more about standardizing.
It is.
Streamlining the user experience.
Exactly.
Taking those raw ideas and, polishing them up.
That's a good way to think about it.
And by making those core functions available to all developers through open APIs.
Right.
Platforms can foster, a more robust and cohesive ecosystem.
It benefits everyone, really.
Right. So the developers get wider access to these tools. Users get a smoother, more integrated experience.
Makes sense.
Another example of that balance, right?
Yeah.
Knowing when to open up, when to take control.
It's key.
All to create a platform that thrives.
Absolutely.
So speaking of thriving platforms, there's another fascinating case study that shows how API strategies can make or break a platform.
Oh, really? Which one?
This time, we're looking at the retail giants, Walmart versus Amazon.
Ah, the battle of the shopping carts.
Exactly. What can we learn from these two?
Well, Amazon, they understood the power of open APIs from the start. They created this really robust platform where third-party sellers could, easily integrate their products and services.
So they built this massive marketplace where anyone could participate.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that helped them grow like crazy.
It did.
Now, Walmart, they took a different approach.
Okay.
Much more cautious. Initially, they limited access to their APIs. They focused more on building their own internal stuff.
So more of a walled garden approach.
Kind of, yeah.
They wanted to control everything in-house. They did eventually open up their APIs.
Okay.
But that initial hesitation, it really put them behind. Compared to Amazon's developer ecosystem,
Right. They just couldn't keep up.
it limited their ability to adapt.
Especially in, the fast-paced world of e-commerce.
It's tough to catch up when you're playing from behind.
So Amazon's openness, their API strategy, it gave them a clear advantage.
It did.
It helped them scale faster, attract a wider range of partners and sellers.
And ultimately become the dominant force in online retail.
Yeah.
It just shows you openness can be a huge driver of growth, but you need a strategic vision
Right.
and a willingness to collaborate, embrace external innovation.
This has been a whirlwind tour.
It has.
From MySpace and Facebook to Apple, Google, even Walmart and Amazon.
It's fascinating how these decisions play out.
It really is.
And there's no one-size-fits-all, right?
No, it's about understanding the nuances of openness. Knowing when to open up, when to hold back.
Yeah.
And adapting to, the constantly changing digital world.
It's all about making choices that align with the platform's goals.
Right. Its values,
Yeah.
its long-term vision.
Exactly.
And those choices, they impact more than just, business success.
Well, for sure.
They have ethical implications, too.
That's right.
So I'm curious to explore that side of things a bit more.
Right.
We talked about, data privacy, user safety. But I think there are even deeper questions to consider.
Okay.
What are some of the ethical dilemmas that platforms face?
That's a great question. It's something we definitely need to talk about.
It really is.
It's a big part of the platform revolution.
It is. It is.
And as these platforms become more and more ingrained in our lives,
Right.
they have immense power.
Yeah.
And as the saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely.
So let's dive into some of those ethical considerations.
Okay.
Stay tuned for the next part of our deep dive, where we'll unpack those dilemmas and explore how these platforms can be used for good.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it. So they loosened their grip a bit, but still kept a pretty firm hand on the wheel.
Yeah, exactly. Apple found that sweet spot where they could encourage a thriving app ecosystem,
Mm,
but without totally relinquishing control.
right.
They gave developers, good tools, access to this massive user base through the App Store.
Yeah, and that's been a huge moneymaker for them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about all the app downloads, the in-app purchases.
That's a lot of money.
It's huge. Now, Google, on the other hand,
Yeah.
they went in a completely different direction with Android.
Really?
Yeah, they went all in on openness.
Mm.
Even created this open source version called AOSP, stands for Android Open Source Project.
Oh, okay.
Basically, they were like, here's the blueprint, go wild.
Wow, that's a lot of trust in the community.
It is.
But did that, backfire at all?
Well, it definitely led to some interesting challenges.
Okay.
So Android was adopted really widely, which is great.
Yeah.
But then Google found themselves dealing with this thing called fragmentation.
Fragmentation, what is that?
Basically, all these device manufacturers,
Yeah.
they were creating their own customized versions of Android,
Mhm.
often without Google's core apps.
Oh, so things like their search engine or Google Maps.
Yes.
So Google was kind of left out of the party a little bit.
You could say that they weren't too happy about missing out on the revenue and data from those devices.
Right, right.
It was a real innovator's dilemma situation, being disrupted by their own openness.
That's fascinating.
So they had to figure out how to regain some control.
Okay, so what did they do? Did they just shut down the whole open source project?
Well, not quite. They couldn't really backpedal on AOSP,
Right.
but they did introduce some, let's call them strategic nudges.
Right.
Like they started requiring licenses for manufacturers to access Google Play.
Oh, so if you want our app store, you got to play by our rules a little bit.
Pretty much. And they made key apps like, search and maps exclusive to their ecosystem. So manufacturers had an incentive to join their Open Handset Alliance.
Okay, so it wasn't a complete shutdown, more like a course correction.
Yeah, exactly. They found a way to guide the ecosystem in a direction that worked for both them and the users.
So even with a commitment to openness, there's still room for, strategic maneuvering.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to this idea of user participation.
Okay.
And how it fits into this whole openness equation.
So we're talking about how much users can actually create content and really shape the platform experience.
Exactly. Think about Wikipedia.
Okay.
Their whole thing is letting anyone edit entries.
Right, right.
And it's resulted in, the biggest encyclopedia in the world.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It is. It really speaks to the power of, collective knowledge and collaboration.
But we've also seen how that can go wrong, right?
We have.
Like with the murder of Meredith Kircher entry we talked about before.
Yeah, that's a good example of how unchecked openness can lead to problems.
Bias, inaccuracies.
Exactly.
It can be a recipe for trouble.
It can. So that's where this concept of curation comes in.
Okay, curation.
Platforms need to find a way to manage that user-generated content without, crushing the spirit of collaboration.
Right, because that's what makes these platforms so great in the first place.
Exactly.
So how do platforms like Wikipedia and Facebook actually do that? I mean, how do they walk that line?
Well, Wikipedia relies heavily on community moderation.
Okay.
Users can flag edits that seem, potentially problematic. And they've got algorithms and software tools to help identify things like inconsistencies or potential vandalism.
So they're using technology to help keep things in check.
Yeah, they are. Facebook, on the other hand, relies more on user reporting systems.
Okay.
So flagging inappropriate content. And they've invested a lot in AI to help detect and remove harmful content automatically.
So it's a combination of human oversight and AI working together.
Yeah, you could say that it's a constant effort to keep things balanced.
So it sounds like it's not just about reacting to bad behavior. It's also about proactively fostering a healthy community.
Exactly. And platforms like Uber and Airbnb, they use rating systems for this.
Right, to build trust and encourage positive interaction.
Exactly.
So it's really a multi-pronged approach, isn't it?
It is.
Using technology, community feedback, and smart design to create a space where users can contribute.
Yeah.
But without things, going completely off the rails.
You got it. It's all about finding that sweet spot.
And sometimes the biggest challenges to a platform's openness come not from bad actors, but from their own success.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What happens when a feature or an app becomes so popular that it starts to overshadow the platform itself?
I see what you mean.
It's almost like, the creation turning on the creator.
Yeah, it's a power struggle.
Exactly. Think about Google Maps a few years back.
Okay.
The undisputed king of mapping apps.
It was. Everyone used it.
It was even featured on the iPhone, remember?
Right.
But as location data became increasingly valuable,
Yeah.
Apple realized that Google Maps' dominance could be a problem.
A problem.
Yeah, they were worried that Google Maps would become too powerful, maybe even lure users away from Apple's own platform.
Ah, I get it.
So Apple decided to build their own mapping app.
Wow, even though Google Maps was already so established.
They did. It was a risky move.
Yeah, starting from scratch like that.
And there were some bumps along the way, right?
Oh, definitely. I remember those early versions of Apple Maps.
Yeah, not great.
People were getting lost, directions were all messed up.
It was a PR nightmare.
It really was. But Apple was willing to take that hit because they knew how important it was to control that part of their platform.
So it was a strategic decision.
Absolutely.
Even if it meant some short-term pain.
And in the end, it paid off.
Yeah.
Apple Maps is a serious contender now.
It is. And Apple regained control of that valuable piece of their platform.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So sometimes you got to be willing to make those tough choices, even if it means, a little short-term damage to your reputation.
It's about the long game. Right?
Absolutely. And sometimes those tough choices involve, reining in popular features that were initially developed outside the platform. Think about things like video and audio playback, photo editing, voice commands.
Yeah, those are pretty essential these days.
They are, and a lot of those started as third-party apps.
Right, right.
But as those features become more and more important, the platforms need to make sure they're consistent, high quality, and seamlessly integrated.
So it's not about squashing innovation, it's more about standardizing things, making the user experience better for everyone.
And by making those core functions available to all developers through open APIs, platforms can actually foster a more robust and cohesive ecosystem.
So it's a win-win in a way.
It is. Developers get wider access to those essential tools, and users get a smoother, more integrated experience.
So it's all about balance again, isn't it?
It always comes back to that, recognizing when to embrace openness and when to exercise control.
And all of that is in service of creating a thriving platform.
Exactly. And to illustrate that point even further, let's look at another case study. This time, we'll compare Walmart and Amazon.
Oh, the retail giants.
Yeah, two very different approaches to platform openness.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, Amazon, from the very beginning, they understood the power of open APIs.
Okay.
They built this really robust platform that allowed third-party sellers to, seamlessly integrate their products and services.
So they created this massive interconnected marketplace.
Exactly.
Where anyone could participate.
Pretty much.
And that fueled their incredible growth.
It absolutely did. They tapped into the power of the crowd.
Now, Walmart, they were a bit more hesitant, weren't they?
Yeah, they were much more cautious. Initially, they limited API access, focused on building their own internal capabilities.
So they were more about keeping things in-house.
Yeah, you could say that.
More of a closed-off approach.
In a way, yeah. And while they eventually opened up their APIs, that initial reluctance, it really hurt them.
In what way?
It created this gap in their developer ecosystem.
So they didn't have that same network of partners and sellers that Amazon had.
Exactly. And that made it harder for them to adapt to the rapidly changing world of e-commerce.
So Amazon's openness, their embrace of APIs, it gave them a significant advantage.
It did. It
allowed them to grow much faster and attract a wider range of partners.
And ultimately become the dominant force in online retail.
So another case study that highlights the power of openness.
It really does.
When it's done strategically, of course.
Of course. It requires vision, a willingness to collaborate, and a real embrace of external innovation.
We've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we?
We have, from MySpace and Facebook to Apple, Google, even Walmart and Amazon.
It's fascinating to see how these decisions about openness, they really shape the landscape of the digital world.
They really do. And it's clear that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
No, it's all about understanding the nuances.
Right.
Knowing when to open up, when to hold back.
Yeah.
And constantly adapting to the ever-changing digital world.
And as we've seen, those choices have implications that go beyond just business.
Oh, absolutely.
There are ethical considerations to think about as well.
Yeah, we talked about data privacy and user safety. But I think there are even deeper questions to explore.
Like what?
Well, what are some of the broader ethical dilemmas that platforms face as they navigate this complex landscape?
That's a great question, and it leads us to an even more thought-provoking discussion. Stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll delve into those ethical considerations and explore how these powerful platforms can be used for good.
So we've talked about, the strategic side of openness,
Yeah.
the operational challenges.
Mm.
But now I want to get into the ethics of it all.
Right.
Because these platforms, they have a huge impact on our lives.
They really do. It's
Yeah.
something we can't ignore.
So what are some of those ethical dilemmas that, keep platform creators up at night?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is just the sheer scale of these platforms.
Okay.
They connect billions of people. They shape public discourse, influence everything from, what we buy to how we vote.
Yeah, think about the role social media played in recent elections.
Exactly. The power to amplify certain voices and suppress others, it's a heavy responsibility.
It's like they've become the new town square.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
Where ideas are debated, information is shared.
Right, but it's a town square with algorithms.
Yeah, and data analysis happening behind the scenes.
Exactly, which raises questions about fairness and transparency.
So it's not just about the content itself.
Oh.
It's about how that content is presented, amplified.
Right. Think about those algorithms designed to, keep us engaged. They can create echo chambers.
Right.
Filter bubbles.
Yeah, where we only see information that reinforces our existing beliefs.
Exactly. And we're less likely to encounter different perspectives.
So it's not just what we see, it's what we don't see.
That's a really important point. The information that gets filtered out or downplayed.
By these algorithms that we often don't even know are there.
Right. And that highlights the need for what's called algorithmic accountability.
Go ahead.
Platform creators need to be upfront about how those algorithms work. What factors influence their decisions.
Yeah. The users need to understand how their online experience is being shaped.
Exactly. Transparency is crucial.
It is, but it seems like it also requires, a lot of ongoing dialogue.
Absolutely.
Collaboration between platform creators, users, policymakers.
I agree. It's a complex challenge.
Yeah.
And it's not a one-time fix. It's an ongoing conversation.
Right, because new technologies keep emerging.
They do.
The ethical landscape keeps shifting.
Exactly. Think about AI, for example.
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah, AI-powered platforms. They could personalize our experiences in amazing ways.
Right.
But they also raise concerns about privacy, bias, potential misuse.
It feels like we're always playing catch-up.
In a way, we are. But that's the nature of innovation, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so.
The important thing is that we don't shy away from these tough conversations.
Right.
We need to face these challenges head on. Ask the hard questions.
Yeah.
Push for solutions that put people first.
That's a good point.
It can't just be about technological progress.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From the strategic benefits of openness to the operational challenges.
Right.
And now, the ethical dilemmas.
It's all connected.
It is. Really is.
And hopefully this is giving you a new way to think about the platforms you use every day.
Yeah, a framework for understanding the choices that platform creators are making.
Exactly, because it's not just about convenience or entertainment. It's about understanding the power dynamics and advocating for a digital future that reflects our values.
So as we wrap things up, I want to leave you with a challenge.
Okay.
Think about your favorite platforms. The ones you use for, communication, entertainment, shopping, whatever.
Makes sense.
Ask yourself, how open are they? How did they handle user-generated content?
Yeah.
How transparent are they about their algorithms and data practices?
Good question.
And most importantly, are they using their power responsibly?
We all need to be asking these questions.
We do.
Not just as passive users,
Right.
but as active participants in shaping the digital world.
Yeah, because the future of these platforms, it depends on us.
It does. It really does.
Holding them accountable. Pushing for ethical and responsible innovation.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, that's about it for this deep dive.
It's been a great conversation.
It has. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
We hope you've learned a thing or two. And that you'll keep asking those tough questions.
Absolutely. Stay curious out there.
Thanks for listening.